So when you're talking about the comparative market analysis, we lovingly give it the CMA. In 2026, things are a little bit different. And what we want to talk about today is not just a step by step, but things that you absolutely need to be considering. Because when you're conducting for accuracy, for consistent property evaluations, it's just not easy. Most of the agents now are not taught this skill in real estate classes. We're certainly not taught this when we're out learning how to get our license. So, what I'm going to walk you through is the entire process. And if you're interested in a follow through template that you can use after the show, hit me up directly for it and I will happily email it to you. So the CMA's purpose is so that you can actually help agents price a home accurately, backing it up absolute with data. By comparing a subject property to similar active and recently sold homes, the CMA is going to give a much clearer estimate of the market value. It's going to actually help justify the pricing conversation that you're having with the sellers. And that's ultimately it. What we're going to talk about today is how to complete the CMA, what you're including, how you choose comps, how you're making adjustments, and how you turn all that research into a pricing strategy. Because if you think you're going to do this with an application without ever showing up at the house, think again. So there's some key takeaways that I want you to consider while we're having the talk today. First off, the process. The process itself involves just 4 steps. You need to be able to gather data on the main property. You've got to be able to research the property and choose the comparable homes for it. You've got to evaluate comps and adjust for differences in those characteristics. And then you've got to actually prepare the report. The most basic characteristics that we're going to talk about are location, property type and size, property amenities and any special characteristics that are in there, and then the neighborhood trends and the statistics. So let's start off with gathering your data. When you're completing a CMA through data analytics so that you can get a good understanding of the property and value, you need to include in your gathering all of the information as if the property was just being built. So you need to know gross living area, net living area, living, heated and cooling area, how many bedrooms and bathrooms it has. As a listing agent, especially, these are crucial steps. This is because being knowledgeable about the home's characteristics is going to help you have an effective marketing plan, which we just talked about last week. I recommend actually using public records when you're doing the research of the property, as these are most likely the most accurate and going to have the most up-to-date information on it. Many of the MLSs have the ability to retrieve this data directly from public record for you, but realists from CoreLogic or Property Radar are probably some of the best that are going to be able to do it. So once you gathered that data, I'm also going to strongly recommend an in-person visit to the property, because without it, you might as well just put the Zillow t-shirt on and decide that that's how you're going to certify a home's value for pricing. Because honestly, if you're not willing to walk through the home, just like if you were trading in a used car, you've got to be able to stage the sizing of that home against good, better, and best. The home's value based on the analytics behind the other properties that are actively participating in sales and the ones that have sold within the last 90 days to 6 months are critical. But without the walk through the home to know whether the property is in good condition, better condition, or best condition, or whether or not you need to market this property as an investor's package, is going to depend solely on you walking through it alone. So let's talk about some of the items that need to be considered in your CMA data. So property location, obviously. Considering where the property is located relative to shopping and public transportation and entertainment centers and grocery stores, places of employment, this is how you figure out, are we urban? Are we suburban? Are we rural? the idea here is to have a quick, convenient access to amenities and resources, and generally high value by most prospective buyers. I also recommend taking note of whether a property is in a located flood zone, because all things being equal, especially in the state of Florida, most buyers are still going to view this as a negative, even if they're used to paying flood insurance in the past. It is not inexpensive. It is not easy to obtain, and it is an absolute hit to the bottom line. For those of your clients that have a tight debt to income budget already, throwing a lofty flood insurance policy on top of it might be what throws it over. Year built. When a home is built, it can have quite the meaningful impact on its value, but how it's perceived totally depends on the market. Newer homes are often viewed more favorably, only because of the modern layouts, updated materials, compliance with newer building codes, which can mean fewer immediate repairs. However, in a lot of markets, the older homes with unique architecture, with some history, with some charm, can command the premium price, especially if they are well maintained and have just been updated to make sure that you're not dealing with original factory set. Property type is equally as important. Make note of the property that you're evaluating, whether it's a single family home, a condo, multi unit property, townhouse. Um, whether it's located in a planned urban development or whether it's just on an open street layout. This is going to be important when you're looking for the comparables, because in most instances, a buyer will not be interested in anything that's too drastically different than what they had in mind. So when you had your vision conversation, their dream board of their house that they're looking for, you're going to need to find something that's as close to a fit or most of the key market fits in that description as possible. Because if you get them too far out of that, chances are you're pushing the sale rather than finding the way to finance the dream. Somebody that's looking to buy a 1 unit single family home probably is not going to be too interested in a duplex. Property design, style, use case might require physical inspection of the property for that, but you're going to want to determine the home's architectural design. The idea here is when you're looking for comparable properties, you want to make sure to select properties with a similar design and a build style for those that are likely to appeal also to the same style of buyer. You want to ensure that the design is typical and it conforms to the neighborhood. Equally, how big is it? The square footage of the home can be broken down into gross living area, which is the total square footage that we talk about in Florida, or the total heated or cooled square footage that we talk about in Florida. That will not include like an unfinished garage or an open lanai patio, that type of thing. Total lot size, of course, will determine how much of the house is taking up the entire lot, so that people can estimate very quickly whether or not they've got enough room for any type of yard space. Room count these days, I find, is not as critical as the square footage itself, but the number of bedrooms and bathrooms will impact the price of the house. In addition to the number of rooms, however, I need you to also consider the type and the style of each. For example, a bedroom with a 5-piece ensuite bathroom is something that would be considered a lot more valuable than a standard bedroom by itself with a traditional closet. Similarly, full bathrooms have toilet, sink, and shower are considered more valuable than a half bath that will not have a shower or a tub combo or anything like that. The next important thing is probably your amenities and your special features. And I mean of the house, not necessarily of the community that you're in. Those are going to add value to a property and can include things like solar panels, fireplaces, patios, decks, lanais, pools. If the property is located in a homeowners association, it will include the other community amenities, but this doesn't increase the value of your home as much as it increased the purchasing wants and the needs and how it It leans into the passion of all of the all of the additional things that I get with this house versus buying the one just down the street with the same square footage with no amenities in the community whatsoever. Car storage is more and more important. Car storage is a carport, assigned parking space, or an enclosed, open and shut garage. In addition to the added storage availability, it does take note of whether or not it's attached or detached to the property, how large it is, and generally speaking, an attached garage will add the most value to a home, especially one that has a opening and closing door, not just the open carport style. Having standard utility connections and things like internet, water service, electricity, gas, these are all things that can be taken for granted when you're estimating a property. But I'm telling you, absolutely check it out, especially for the rural or older homes. Verifying a property actually has proper hookups for appliances, um, if it has the capability for gas, if it is hooked up to a well, or if it is hooked up to septic service rather than any type of city utilities, are going to go a long way to how easy your inspections go and how much a client's willing to tolerate. They already have to maintain a house. If they have to maintain all the services that keep the house running, sometimes that's a real turnoff. I personally enjoy selling in the high rise communities, so view is a must. All things being equal, properties with a beneficial view have ability to fetch a higher purchase price. Typical examples of what I call a beneficial view is a property that overlooks the city or overlooks a park near the golf course, can overlook a lake or a pond area, the mountains if you're in one of those states. Adverse views would typically regarded as a property that has a view of a parking lot or a street or railroad tracks or the parts of the city that aren't so nice to look at. Garbage dumps, high tension wires, commercial buildings are your view. These aren't things that are typically going to be attractive to folks. When you're talking about the view, also make sure the property rights and the zoning just go right into your natural rhythm of investigation. Property rights need to be fee simple or leasehold, depending on how it's set. Fee simple is the most common. It grants the permanent ownership and property and any buildings on the property belonging to the owner. A leasehold, on the other hand, grants only temporary use of the land. For homeowners, fee simple is the more desirable, and it is something that will provide a lot more value than a similar property that's offered as leasehold. A big conversation that's happening in Florida right now seems to be that we are on our way to dissolving property taxes. But that doesn't mean we're going to get rid of homeowners and associations. The amount of HOA dues and property taxes currently truly affect a home's availability and affordability. All of these things for the higher tax points, the HOA dues tend to correlate with slower sales prices for a home. HOA dues will also include special assessments, something that can further detract from a home's value. These are things that if you are reliant upon a community to help service and maintenance your property, then they had better had done 100% of the job expectation. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for you to salvage the value of a property while trying to sell it. While paying more is not ideal, you do need to keep in mind that the cost of an HOA does typically offset the amenities that are offered. So, common examples of that: community pool, tennis courts, basketball courts, gym facilities. You need to expect that you're going to pay for that in either an HOA plan or some type of CDD. Otherwise, they're going to do independent memberships, and that's not typically attractive to most folks. There are some neighborhood trends that are currently going on that um, people tend to to enjoy taking advantage of. So, homes value when you're tying it to a market itself, specific to a neighborhood or community, its location. When you're doing the evaluation, you'll need to be able to walk through property value trends, supply and demand for homes in the area, total time spent marketing, the property value itself, to look to see whether or not it's been increasing, decreasing, or had a stable 3, 6, 12 months. You can take a real quick look at closed sales as well as the current active listings. I also recommend that you research any external factors that might be a good explanation of any kind of fluctuation that's going on. Supply and demand is always a big kicker in Florida. This ebbs and flows and is totally dependent on the area in Florida that you're at. You want to determine whether or not there's a shortage or an oversupply of housing availability. In our market here in the Apollo Beach and the Tampa Bay area, we have a shortage of homes for sale. Buyers need to expect to pay more. On the other hand, markets where there's an oversupply of homes, down towards the Bradenton area right now, where they have kind of overbuilt for the timing with the expectation of imminent growth. Um, that kind of situation is going to see where buyers are able to negotiate prices considerably more. Marketing time is also a big consideration. The time required to close a home after it's listed for sale, the common days on market, this is a good indicator on how easy it's going to be to find buyers. Neighborhoods with marketing times of 6 months or longer means that you have either a shortage of buyers or an oversupply of homes for sale, and people aren't simply motivated to move to that area. Step two, researching the market so that you can choose the comparables. Once you gathered all of the data on the actual property that you're selling, the next step is going to be to find similar homes that you can use as comparable support. There are free CMA worksheets that are out there, and those are great. When I go over how to start the process of finding a good comp, as well as key feature sets, the first thing I do is look for the most similar property. It's very tempting to find a comp based on characteristics, by the way, like whether a home has a pool or how many bedrooms and bathrooms it has, the easy numbers. I recommend start at more of a high level by narrowing down your geographic area, specific neighborhoods that you're choosing for. If it is a large community that the home you're selling is in, you should probably stick to it and understand that if homes haven't sold in that neighborhood or community, you might have a different problem. And arguably, one of the most important items when it comes to selecting a house is, can I actually find comps that make sense and within the common requirements of what qualifies a comp? Distance. Closer a property is to yours, the more likely it's going to appeal to be the same type when you're talking about a buyer. A good rule of thumb is, in a well-populated area, limit yourself to no more than a 1 mile radius. And again, if you were in a closed community, you should probably not leave that community when doing your comp search. Rural areas especially may require a little bit larger radius, but it can vary from market to market. And if you're going to sacrifice distance, you better make absolutely sure everything else about the homes match. Location to amenities is, again, very important. Good comps should have similar distance to amenities. That's the shopping centers, the grocery stores, the entertainment areas, places of employment. Farther out you go away from those things, you need to make sure that comps you choose follow that same expectation. Neighborhood boundaries, depending on the market, may have some physical markers that identify and separate neighborhoods. Freeways, major busy roads, these are all common examples. As properties are located past those boundaries, they won't necessarily make for a good comp because of the differences in architectural style, lot and size, and typically age. The key features for me, once you've narrowed down the area for your comps, you can then focus on some specific features and characteristics. You're going to want to consider date of sale. Markets change quickly. So you want to choose comps that have recently sold and can prove indication that your subject property is similar in this time than a home that is more a dated comp. rule of thumb is to choose a home that has sold no more than 6 months ago. Sales or financing concessions are important, especially in today's market. To get a good apples to apples comparison, you need to make sure that you figure out whether sellers' concessions were provided as a part of the sale. For instance, a property might have sold for more than normal, but the seller agreed for some of the buyer's loan closing costs or needs for repairs be met at a financing model instead of a direct price reduction. Step 3, evaluate the comps and adjust for differences. Once you've selected comparable properties to your subject property, the house that you're actually selling, the next step is going to be to adjust for differences in those features. This is something you should absolutely expect to do for most of your comps. There's no two houses that are the same. For example, a comp of a property that has an extra bedroom or is larger by 800 square feet, you're going to expect that you are going to make the adjustment to meet the need of the property. So for all of you realtors that are out there, subject property, we adjust the comp property to meet the subject property, not the other way around. So if it has more bedrooms or more bathrooms, you increase the comp property's value. Subject property stays the same. If it is a larger total square footage, then you increase the comp property's value. Then you're taking the average of the comp properties. That's how you come up to the new subject property's value. To determine the amount of those adjustments, whether it's 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, you should probably let data drive the math. Look at either comparables where primary differences on bedroom count were used. If you look at sales in that same neighborhood of a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, you're going to see very quickly what the adjustment was for the cost of that extra bedroom. Your CMA report can also include a range for what the property is worth. After all, you are at the mercy of your seller when determining how we're going to strike the property onto the market for its first live value. It is critical that you and the seller are agreeable and that it meets your marketing plan. If these two things are too far apart, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the attention and justify that the property hasn't had the right amount of attention just a month later. So make sure that you're paying attention to those. Now that you got all that, let's get to number 4, preparing the CMA report itself. You got to put this in a format that's easy for them to understand. They are not real estate agents. I hearken this back to my technology days. The last thing you want is a technical discussion and a technical review for the business level or the C-suite. You want to make absolutely sure what they're looking for is what you're talking about, and not just all the technical jargon that comes with your role. This is a great marketing opportunity, by the way, for you to really stand apart from other real estate agents. It's a chance for you to show your knowledge and your expertise in selling homes. In addition, you can include elements from that CMA worksheet that I'm offering to you today, as well as there are guides for listing presentations that we have talked about in earlier sessions. So in addition to that, I want to make sure that you include, as this is a leave behind, your bio and how to contact you, highlights of the subject property, top comparable homes, highlights of the homes that have recently sold, neighborhood profile, market statistics, average days on the market, price per square feet that are selling in the community based on the amenities the homes have, your marketing plan, and some testimonials from your previous clients if you have them. It is great to be able to cite a specific reference to a home that you have sold. What's the client? Who's the client? What was the property that was sold? And what was the marketing and how did this plan work for them? If you have the budget to actually create a CMA packet, very nice printout of everything that you're talking about so that you can actually show them why you're pricing the home that way and present it to them, not just leave it and go. Will go a long way for people not only to remember who you are, but to remember what the original intent was behind why you priced the house this way so that they can brag to their friends and send you referrals later on. And then, of course, presenting it itself. I absolutely recommend you have all of this prepared, drafted, reviewed by your broker, and you actually get it nicely printed before you have your listing appointment. I know it is, hey, I've got to hurry up and get to the site, the get it while it's hot. But if you don't go prepared and if you don't go showing off your best side, chances are this is not going to be the experience that they or you expected. Far better to tell your seller that you're refining numbers and you want to make sure everything is perfect and get yourself that additional day before showing up completely out of whack and looking unprofessional. While you present your CMA, I want you to be able to showcase it as a strategy, not just numbers. Walk your sellers through the market trends, why you chose these comparable homes, and how you arrived at your recommended price point, because ultimately they need to clearly understand your thought process because you are the expert, but they are the boss. And when it comes to delivery, that clean branded version of I'm going to back up and say it again, branded, not just by you. You are your brand in real estate, but you chose a brokerage that represents you and that represents publicly well. You need to absolutely make sure that your brokerage brand is included on every piece of materials that are left behind, that are emailed, or that on display on social media. I'll let that one sink in for everybody that is currently under violation of that. When it comes to delivering it, avoid overwhelming the seller with a lot of data. The data is there to support you. The data is there to support your marketing plan. Focus on the highlights that support the pricing, because at the end of a listing presentation, you're going to leave that copy of the CMA with the seller, and they not only need to digest it, but they need to see that you marked through it while you were reviewing it with them. Take the pen, make sure that you're making all of your edits, because ultimately at the end, you're going to be giving that pen to them, not just as an advertising key point, but as an opportunity for them to sell and sign an agreement to do business with you in the future. Beyond the listing presentation, I'm here to tell you a CMA is a powerful prospecting tool. You can send these in the mail. You can drop these off when you're door knocking. Strongly encourage creating CMAs for homes and surrounding the listing that you're currently representing. It's a simple way to stay top of mind, simple way to demonstrate that you have superior market knowledge, and you can start conversations with potential future sellers. I get a lot of questions on this. Understanding the purpose, how many comps should I have? What are the differences between the CMA and an appraisal? Why is it the most common factor? What's the most common factor to consider in my CMAs? And all those are great. They'll teach you all of that in your licensing and in your training. The only thing that I want to make sure that I absolutely differentiate is what is a CMA versus an appraisal and what's its intended purpose for you. A CMA is used primarily to determine a home's listing price, to attract as many buyers as possible, as well as appropriate an offer price and increase the likelihood of it being selected by a seller. The appraisal, however, is performed by a licensed appraiser only, not by a real estate agent. And it's typically used for the purpose of determining a home's value for the lender and for the insurance perspective, and not used for evaluating the price point or how the house should be marketed. So that's the only thing that you need to remember on those. So bringing it all together, as a listing agent, a property researched CMA will absolutely ensure that you have priced a property right. You can now attract buyers. You can now get the highest sales price possible and negotiate firmly based on your research. As the buyer's agent, you need to understand that the clients place competitive offers to maximize the odds of getting accepted. You should be doing a buyer's CMA as well. You should be on the phone with the listing agent, providing your analysis, and if your numbers aren't there, find out why, because I promise you, the listing agent has superior knowledge of that property, and they priced it to sell. They don't get paid unless it does. So get on the phone, listing agent and buyer's agent, in your negotiations, because this is what your buyer wants to do. You need to be the expert in the room and make sure that you're having an intelligent conversation on how to make an equal buy and sell opportunity and a happiness level to both sides. While it might be a very time consuming process, conducting the proper due diligence and preparing a CMA will allow you to have a large payoff at the end of the day. What I need you to understand when you're doing this is to be the consummate professional, to be able to represent properties. You must first master how to evaluate, estimate, and actually record a marketable value of a home. Presenting it, selling that to the seller, and then setting yourself up for success as a representative against many buyer's agents is always going to be the next big step. Stay tuned for future episodes so that we can teach you how to be a better buyer's agent as well as a better listing agent. Have a great day, everybody.